Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Entrepreneur and Leadership Podcast. And I'm so happy and proud to have today as my guest Minou Schilling. And we're going and entering the topic of vision and purpose and how and why that is important, so important for the your business success. And in generally, on this podcast, I'm talking about with global leaders, experts, and entrepreneurs about success keys, hacks, tricks to build and grow your business. And to give you a short introduction of Minou, Minou is focused for a long time on creative thinking methods and innovation processes for the last 8 years, more or less, resulting in a BSc in food innovation and a master in creativity innovation. She has a hand-on experience in a wide range of innovation methods like design thinking, lateral thinking, and the design sprint. She's an impact-driven entrepreneur specialized in sustainable business innovation processes. She co-founded a vision and purpose-driven, positive-driven company, the Green Sprint. She will talk in more detail. And that is a sustainable innovation collective focused on accelerating the transition to the fair and sustainable inclusive world. Her company focuses on helping businesses in this transition by facilitating strategy innovation processes sparked with in-depth knowledge of sustainability and sustainable business development. And her favorite quote, and I like that very much, is, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them," which I think is guessed from Albert Einstein quite a while ago. And I'm so happy to have Minou here on this show today. Welcome, Minou. Yeah.
Welcome, and thank you for the cool introduction. And yeah, it's true. It's indeed a quote from
Yeah,
Albert Einstein.
and
Yeah, I love it very much.
Did you want to add something to that? To give it some
No, I think
background, yeah.
you captured it. You captured it pretty nicely. This is indeed exactly what we do. We focus on helping businesses to create more positive impact, and that's why I'm also here talking today about vision and purpose, because vision and purpose play tremendously important roles, not only in business success, but also in life success and in the success that we want as human beings on this planet. And it really ties everything together for me. It's like, it's sort of the glue that holds everything together. So that's why it plays such an important role. And especially within creative thinking processes and lateral thinking processes, you have different types of creativity, of course. There's like free-flowing creativity. There's a really interesting author who wrote a couple of books on that, like Csikszentmihalyi, where it's this flow and like this creative flow, but it doesn't really have a purpose or a goal. You're just really flowing in this creative mode. Where the other type of creativity, like problem-solving creativity, is really targeted to tackling a certain problem or achieving a certain purpose or a certain goal. And that's where purpose is just, it's a driving force.
Especially we live in a world which is really dramatically changing. There are lots of mankind threats to mankind, like global warming, being in a balance with nature, and in this sense, a purpose-driven, a positive purpose to help people to have the entire space, the world, the fauna and flora worldwide is definitely something everybody should have a focus on, and first of all as well all companies. Yeah, therefore I think this transition to a fair, sustainable, and inclusive world is probably one of the biggest things on your agenda anyway, I guess.
Oh yeah, absolutely. A fair world, an inclusive world, a world where there's climate justice, not just climate action, and yet we're living just and connected, and also more in connectedness with nature, more in connectedness with each other, and maybe even living slower, like embracing a slow kind of living, driven by purpose, driven by what we want to achieve in life over a longer period of time, sort of a sustainable form of happiness instead of this like quick gratification that we often now get from quarterly reports for businesses, but also from like social media and on endorphin and all of those things that just kind of hype us up and say, okay, like every time, like we want more and we want more and we want it faster and we want it now. Where if we tie in with our purpose and with our goal and really find like this balanced ground of like why are we walking around on this earth and what do we want to achieve, and you're slowly working towards that goal, then this whole need for short-term gratification and quarterly goals and constant exponential growth, which is also obviously depleting our resources and polluting our planet, it kind of fades away because
Yeah.
you get a more balanced, sustainable approach to life. And this goes for businesses as well as people and governments, more of a long-term thinking.
It should be sustainable. That's the thing. Means the footprint or the fingerprint we're bringing into this world should be long lasting in a positive sense. And if I'm looking the management methods and theories, they are much focused on quarterly, on the short term results, and they're even not considering the long term. Effects and impacts, and therefore I agree completely that most business have to rethink they're doing, not only in thinking what I'm doing the next 3 months in terms of profit. They have to really to think about the whole way, to change it from what is important is probably to help people. It's not about the product, it's about helping people, or in an even more biggest context, the whole universe. Means people are not alone, we're living together with plants and with animals. Anyway, therefore the sustainability is very, very important. But how, that's probably the first question I have at you. How can find companies sustainable, lasting, positive purpose in what they are doing?
It's an interesting question. I
Yeah.
think for people, you have things like coaching or like having deep conversations, or in some cases maybe even going in therapy, to figure out like what is really meaningful to me, what makes me tick, what
Yeah.
makes me sustainably happy and driven and wake up in the morning and like with this, let's go get it and create positive impact in this world. And I think the same goes for companies. It's not as simple as just going online and googling what is a great purpose-driven vision statement. Like I have a couple of examples that I absolutely love, but those companies got there by really looking internally, having conversations with all their stakeholders, having conversations with their employees, and really figuring out, okay, why are we on this earth? What is our right of existence? What makes us a great company? And maybe even, and this is a daunting question, ask yourself as a company, when would be our company obsolete? What would be the world? How would the world look like if we succeeded and if we created everything that we set out to do? And for example, like Patagonia has a beautiful mission statement in that they're in a business to save our home planet. So it's very externally focused. And I assume as well that they probably find a new purpose once they saved our home planet, but that is their big goal, which they're constantly working towards to. But that doesn't work for every company. Like it's very, very personal. So as a company, you almost have to go into like sort of group therapy and just figuring it out, hash it out, talk with everyone, and really find that one purpose-driven goal, that one reason why you are in business, that works for you as an organization. And what I do find interesting, and that is what B Corps do beautifully, is that they make sure that this purpose is really integrated into the company. So even if there is a shift in management, or if there is a shift in like shareholders, that this purpose is written into this sort of I think it's the bylaw. So I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what the exact terms are, but it's implemented in there. So it's really at the core of the business, and they can't just constantly switch it around.
I think
So they really took it into the core. And if they switch, and if there's a new management, whatever, like if they want to take a new direction, that's fine, but they still work towards that one purpose.
but I think you summarize this brilliantly. I think it's the purpose has to be the fundament is your values as a person and as a company. You have to first find your values, what you're standing for, what you want to do, and with that you can find which purpose you can follow as a company, but it's very much linked to the culture, and the culture to change the culture is the most difficult thing. And you're right, to have a group therapy there is probably the first step to realize who you are as a person or who you are as a company, and which values you want to tackle, or which are the fundament of your acting and doing. And I agree that summarizes brilliantly what you've said, the group theory, because it's about values. Yeah.
It is. It really is. And there's, I don't know if you're familiar with Naomi Klein. She's a writer. She writes a lot about about the climate and communities and social action and all of that. And she has this really interesting quote where she says that like tackling climate change and building livable communities isn't rocket science. It's a lot harder than that, because it's about changing human behaviors. And I think it goes exactly, it's not only about changing human behaviors on a consumer level, but changing human behaviors, because eventually companies are also just made up out of a bunch of people. Changing human behaviors as employees, as CEOs, as stakeholders, shareholders. Indeed, what do they believe in? What makes them tick? Why are those quarterly reports so important? Is there a way we can get around Friedman and find like a new economic truth, or maybe multiple new economic truths, and realizing that businesses are not only in business to make money, but to create value for both people, planet, and profit. You really cannot untangle them. And going through that whole process of unlearning and then learning, that is definitely very similar to proper therapy. And it's going to take time. And that is what daunting as well, because time is not always something that we feel that we have enough of, especially with like the Paris Agreement and now COP26 and 2030 goals and the 2050 goals and net zero and all of these urgent deadlines that we all feel and which we want to work towards too.
Yeah.
And that's true. We have to work towards those, and it's going to like require a lot of like technological fixes and political action. But the true sustainable business change, the transition, the true transition that we as society and as businesses and as economy have to go through is going to take more time. That is not just from one day to the other saying quarterly reports are out, GDP growth is out, growth mindset is out, and now we're embracing this holistic SDG degrowth focused approach. Like I'm throwing a bunch of terms in there that maybe not familiar to everyone, but basically all these terms that are like take a lot of space up in this new world that we want to work towards to. The issue with this new world, both in business and for consumers, is that we don't know how it looks yet. So really we need to take the time to step back, see where we came from, where we want to go, and
yes,
talk about
it's
it.
it's really of management theory. Means it's about is the share value the interesting thing, or as shared values. Yeah, and I think the whole management theory is they're much more on a share value, how to increase the value of the enterprise, and the new way of thinking is how can I provide value to people, and then in the second round effect you get profit. Because you can earn money by producing tanks and weapons, yes, but is that a positive purpose to helping people in terms of defense? It's a tough and very thin ice topic now, but this share value and shared values, I think that's the big difference, and that's a question of your mindset And as you mentioned, to change this mindset, to get from this growth to this growth mindset, to really to explore new ways of living, and to say yes, it is possible to have a circular economy, to have a sustainable business. We mentioned the SDG goals from the United Nations. They're fantastic because they are all purpose driven in terms of to help the world, in terms of people as well, the whole environment.
Yeah, they're very holistically set up. They
Yeah,
include everything indeed.
and
The interesting thing, the switch what you see right now, I think is that yes, a lot of companies have to go to this mindset shift, but there are always going to be people who are not willing to do so or are not ready to do so, or who we just won't convince that the mindset shift is important. But now the numbers are starting to speak. You see that if you want to be a successful business for great returns on investment, for consumer loyalty, people paying a premium price for your products, all of these things, you're better off being a purpose-driven business. You're better off offering sustainable products. It's like I think a survey, I guess it was, I'm not sure if it was either IBM or Harvard, but a study showed that 79% of the Americans say that they are actually more likely to stay loyal to a purpose-driven company, and that they are 4 times more likely to champion those companies. So if you're really, and I notice it myself and I notice it around me as well, like if you believe in the message of a company, like if you believe in a company like Greystone Bakery, they make the cookie dough from Ben and Jerry's, who really are super driven to build livable communities through open hiring, I am way more likely to champion them and to promote them and to stay loyal to them, even if something went wrong, if they have a purpose and not just create really good cookie dough. And
yes,
that's a huge
it's
difference.
not about the product. It's about the whole concept. Yeah, if I'm as a customer, I'm supporting a company much more which values I'm sharing. To be honest, I'm not interested in the company in itself. I'm only interested in the product. Then you end up as a company always in this lowest price, into this commodity problem. Yeah, if you offer value in what sense ever, then you're much better off. And people are valuing sustainable business, environmental, much more. Because even in the financial industry, you have green bonds. Means the investor wants to have an investment where there's a green label on it already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
the behavior of the customer or they are changing, but it takes time.
It does take time, but we're making great progress. Today, the biggest retirement fund in the Netherlands announced that they are not longer working with oil companies, that are not longer investing in oil companies. And these changes, these changes, they're coming. And this is also consumer demands. They're demanding something different. They're demanding that their products and services are offered by purpose-driven companies, that they are sustainable, that their investment funds are focused indeed on green innovation and on microloans. And the world is becoming more inclusive and more social oriented, it seems, although I'm not always sure to which extent this is my bubble. I don't know if you're familiar with that feeling of trying to like pop your bubble and step out of it. Because if I go out there and I talk to people, everybody seems to be caring and purpose driven and focused on the SDGs and sustainable living and vegan and all of that. But the moment I maybe start talking to someone I would normally not be in contact with, or a random person on the street, and you tell them that you will go sit in a bus for 15 hours instead of flying, or that you value people and profit in your business equally, they sometimes look at you like they're seeing ice burning.
No, I agree.
So
It's people, they're pro environmental or sustainable business, but if they have to invest themselves and they have to live the pain, the first steps, then they will say, I'm not causing the problem. Others should do it. I see it as well in politics. Yeah, like we have just election in Germany, and you have this typical this talk. Okay, Germany is only producing 2%. Why should we do? Yeah, and the competition, the Chinese don't do that, and you've also an excuse to not doing it. But on the other hand side, I think the key probably is, and I don't know how you see it. Or I ask you the question: what do you think is innovation, or can innovation play a part in achieving this transition to a more sustainable world, sustainable business?
100%. There is no way we will get to a more sustainable world or a more sustainable business practices without innovation and change management. It's at the core. Um, Innovation, behavior change, mindset shifting, going in therapy as a company, and
I love that.
those couple of elements we have to go through first. So mindset shifting in the therapy, and then at one point, once you figured out as an organization, okay, we went to the mindset shift. This is our strategy. This is how we want to become net zero or climate neutral or whatever, circular, whatever their goal will be. Then you can start looking at, okay, we want, this is our goal, backcast. What do we need to achieve? How can we achieve this? And where do we need innovation? And this is what we realized as well, in starting up the Green Sprint. We started all the way at the beginning by just offering the Google Ventures Design Sprint method, which is purely focused on innovation and problem solving. And it's a great method. It's applicable to many different problems. It's hands-on, it's fast, and people get it, which is great. But you cannot start innovating with a company focused on sustainable goals and sustainable concepts if their mindset or their strategy didn't change yet, because then you will constantly be operating within the old paradigm. So that means that you might only be like tackling the low-hanging fruits, or maybe optimizing some um, business practices, some things in the office, things in materials, but you're not really going to the core of the business and saying, okay, like, what is the purpose of this product? Why are you in existence? Do consumers really need this? Why are we pushing for fast fashion? Why are there 6 seasons of fashion in a year? Or are phones made to break down every 2 years? Like those truly deep questions would tie in with like how you run a business. So yes, you can still start innovating already on these like more side elements, so on the products and the processes, but at one point you have to move into the core, and that is where really interesting business innovation gets into place, and where you can start switching to like new business models, like the sharing models that we're seeing, and subscription and extended producer responsibility, where they don't actually sell you the product, they keep owning it, so they're responsible for it, as they made it, they are the producers of it, you're just using it. So
Exactly.
this whole mindset is then of business is shifting, and there are different types of innovation needed. You have
Yeah,
creative innovation needed in mindset shifting, in technical work, and in business innovation, and in actually how we design the world. Because I mean, let's be clear, we got ourselves into this mess by designing products and methods and systems in a certain way,
exactly.
and we can also design ourselves out of it, and for that we need
What
innovation.
do you think? I think it's both. You need this innovation, but as well to get a mind change, the change of mindset. Um, it might be as well an educational issue. I mean, even schools, universities should prepare much more for a mindset which is thinking in the long term in a more holistic approach. Means if I'm doing this thing, it impacting that and that, and even though I don't know all root cause relationships, it's a complex world, and you're much more probably you have to do an agile approach. And if I look in my did MBA in MBA, and you have all these typical management theories, and they're all in the end. they're prone that you're only looking at short-term results. It's for sure. Yeah, because the whole remuneration is paid by your yearly profit or quarterly profits you're producing, and you're looking only at your sales, but they don't think in a lifetime value of a client, of a population of, yeah, and probably it's both. You need innovation, but as well the educational system needs to prepare the consumer or the people to
Yeah.
to change their mind. Yeah, because if I'm going to a supermarket, how much products are packed and wrapped in plastic? You're nearly not possible to buy anything because the consumer wants it. Yeah, they know on the clean apple, which
It's
is looks
possible, but
brilliant, and
it's
yeah.
really hard. Yeah. And even the thing is, even if you buy something that is not wrapped in plastic, you don't know if you're actually doing better for the environment, because like plastic is also there for a reason, to fight food waste. So if you buy a product that is not wrapped in plastic, the length of that it will actually stay fresh might minimize, and then food waste comes in, and actually having to throw away crops and resources that are grown, sometimes it has a way more negative impact than just wrapping it in plastic. So even there, it's a very complex issue indeed. There are so many elements that play a role, and I, I've talked about this a lot as well, because it really annoys me that we sort of require from our consumers at the moment to be sort of sustainability professors. Like I live and think and breathe sustainability. Like this is all that I talk about and read about. And if I go to a grocery store, like the big grocery stores, if I go to a specific zero waste store, then I know what I'm getting at. But if I go to a big grocery store, I genuinely don't know what the best option is at all times. Of course, there are the very simple things as trying to buy local, minimizing plastic, of course, vegan, vegetarian, as much as possible, fresh, no processed foods. But once you move in the direction of maybe like having to buy a bread or soy products,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it better to buy a soy product in a glass, which is heavy, so in transportation and distribution it emits a lot of CO2, or in plastic, which is lighter, so it emits less CO2, but it requires oil in production, and then you have the plastic waste and all of that. And does recycled really mean recycled? Is what does recyclable really mean recyclable? Like there are so many of these like kind of vague terms right now, that I think that businesses have this responsibility to make it easier and clearer for consumers to make the right choice. And then I'm not talking about starting another certification, because people don't believe in those anymore.
And
We have
writing
enough. Like
down
there
in
are,
small letters, characters, tons of information about its reading. Yeah.
yes, it is super confusing. At the moment, there are over 650 plus sustainability frameworks and certificates. It's ridiculous. Like, of course, people don't understand what they mean anymore, and they don't give any value to them, so they just ignore them. If we would have an industry standard that would actually push businesses around the world, or if, like first we probably have to start in a country or in Europe, um, to always communicate level of CO2, social impact, and then to which extent it is recycled or recyclable, like a couple of those metrics that you just want to know, and not every product that it has its own certificate that then is not clear what that actually means, with like FSC or like for the forests, or I think MSC for the oceans. They sound good, but there are big lobby groups behind them, which makes them completely untrustworthy. So just like overall metric system
It's,
that just
it's
makes it
probably a
easier
little bit
for
like
consumers to make
OKRs. You need
choices.
something easy. Not if you have too many um, objectives or too many certificates or key metrics you want to follow, then the customer or the user is lost in a wood, or in a dark wood of lots of metrics. You need something easy. I agree. And in terms of food, it's probably everybody can think of, because you're you see the problem of food every day, but if you look at the whole supply chain of the whole production of a car, of whatsoever industrial product, it's crazy where the parts are coming from, and how fragile the whole system is, and that has to change, and otherwise you never in circular economy or on more sustainable economy.
Exactly, exactly. And that's also why I said like you need multiple types of innovation, like innovation focused on multiple levels. Like yes, the technological side of getting this car to be more made from recyclable products, being able to like actually recycle or reuse the lithium batteries, getting them electrical, that is all very important. Then sticking to cars, another important one is indeed trying to minimize distribution, keeping it more local, optimizing this. Then another one is the mindset. So
Yeah.
how do we get people to sort of step away from that idea that owning a car is a status symbol, that you need to own a car yourself, that it is this sort of safety that it offers you by having this car standing in front of your house, even though you might only use it every day for 20 minutes in total, or in some cases only on Saturday to drive to the grocery store, that it
3%
stands
3%
there.
of its living time, yeah, is only used. The rest is
Is
rusting.
exactly, and this whole car is produced, and yes, people think, yeah, I'm not using it, so it's not really costing anything. Well, it costed a lot of resources to produce it. And then the last one is business model innovation, and that's why I think things like, of course, you have Tesla, which is focusing on the electrical one, um, pushing the electrical market. But only electrical cars won't cut it. You need things like WeShare or BlaBlaCar that allow us to like share cars or grab a car when we need it, and they really give people the like. When I would be living in Berlin right now, I would never buy a car and park it in Berlin somewhere, because there's so much public transportation and shared transportation that allows me to have a vehicle when I need it, if I would need it. And the same with BlaBlaCar, if more people embrace this, and if you can find a way to normalize car sharing, then why would you take a plane from let's say the Netherlands to Stuttgart, or the Netherlands to Paris, if you can just hop in someone else's car? You'll be there because a lot of people don't like buses and everything, and after a certain age, like a lot of I get that some seniors don't really feel comfortable like squeezing themselves in a bus for like 6 to 8 hours, but a car is a lot more comfortable.
You
So if we
can't
normalize
work.
this,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
that will help.
Yeah.
It can work, but it requires a transition and a change on so many different levels, and this is not the car industry, it's every industry.
I think
So yeah,
you see
innovation
that
again.
with Tesla and as well Volkswagen. I think their new business model will be autonomous driving. That you don't have to own a car, because then you just take your app and the car is passing by, you're dropping in, and it's like a cab without a driver.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you're optimizing it. Because
Yeah.
there's this statistic that stuck with me. The average drill bore, like a machine for construction, is used 11 minutes in its lifetime. That is absolutely ridiculous. Why would we produce a valuable, high resource, high production, high CO2 tool and use it 11 minutes and just have it laying around there? It's just clutter. It's also
Yeah.
not helping. Like every time you move, you have to move it. Like what's the point? What's the point of living like this? Just because
Yeah.
it gives you the sense of, again, it's a sense of safety of like, what if I ever need a hole in my wall? And
Exactly.
companies
And because
thinking,
the problem in
I
building a house, you're destroying space, living space for other species as well. I mean, if you can reduce the
well,
space of your house because you don't need the storage space for a driller or all these things you only use, don't know, once in your lifetime for 2 minutes, it's complex, yeah. And okay,
exactly.
um,
The same goes for cars, the same goes for bicycles, the same goes for all the products we have. Like
washing
indeed, all of
machine.
this washing machine, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. All these materials that we accumulate for a sense of safety, and also I think a sense of success, because our success story, and
Yeah.
that ties back into education as well. Our success story from a very young age is, when I grow up, I want like a house and a garden and a pet. In the Netherlands, we call it huisje, boompje, beestje. It literally means house, garden, pet. And that probably comes with like a family and everything. And the house is filled with like nice stuff so you can live safely. And this is so ingrained. Like we tell from the beginning, like that is what a successful life looks. What do you want to be when you grow up later? The question is,
Yeah.
what is your profession going to be? They expect you to say something like, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a lawyer. They won't expect you to say like, I want to save humans' lives, or I want to work for a just world, or make kids happy. Instead you say teacher. So it's really, it's goal oriented, profession oriented, material oriented, instead of being focused on an emotion or a state of being or something which is again a bit more sustainable and true
It's
to
not a
yourself.
material world. It's more like a well-being world in terms of emotional well-being and to have a happy life. Yeah, and to be happy, I don't need a speedboat. I don't need a Lamborghini. And to be honest,
Yeah.
yeah, if you're living in Berlin or Amsterdam, you have a public transport system which is fantastic. Yeah? You don't even with a bicycle can do lots of things, and that brings us to the next point. Um, it's not only innovation. We need other means the mindset has to change from everybody, and that it's really the educational system has to change, and as well the um, what you said as well, the status symbols, which are culture is a cultural thing. Means and to change culture, you have to break up old belief systems. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
definitely.
And the best thing, of course, is therefore start at a young age. Someone the other day said it a little bit depressing. Said everybody over the age of 20 is actually already fucked. That doesn't work anymore. Like you're 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 wired. But if we find a way to like change the education system, and what we focus less on facts and just getting in knowledge, but more on embracing critical thinking, complexity, systems thinking, thinking long term and short instead of short term, and as well applauding collective successes instead of individual successes, because all your successes in education are individual. But if we start focusing more there already on collective achievements, um, that might change our mindset as well. So yes, it all ties in together.
It's
And I
just,
think
it
the
sounds very
moment
much like an agile
we
approach. Yeah, if to be honest, you have this cross-functional, diverse, and mindset. Means to see the problem from different angles and don't look always on the problem. Look at the solution and a long-lasting solution. And
yeah,
that sounds very similar to the agile mindset, if you like. Yeah.
yeah, this is, yeah, in a way. And I think as well the same with actually an agile mindset and also lateral thinking, this the tackling your thought process and your solving process from different angles and different perspectives. um,
And
you teach that
what
to
kind? I
kids.
think diversity is, I think, the key there as well, or not? Because if you look at the old white boy network, which was ruled the world in the last centuries, it's
Yeah.
part of the problem. Yeah,
Oh yes, it
yeah,
is. It is, and this is a very challenging one, and uh, it's also a hard topic.
thin
Because on the
ice.
one hand, I want to have these conversations with these let's say white boys clubs, because I think it's important to have them. On the other hand, it can get a bit tiring as well, seeing diversity panels with only white middle-aged men, or having to explain over and over again why it is important to think holistically and what it is important to care about, like social justice and diversity and all of that. Sometimes you just want to talk with someone who gets it and who is intrinsically driven,
Yeah.
and then you can really start talking about innovation and how to improve it. And I absolutely always want to have the conversation with anybody about shifting from the shareholder to the stakeholder approach. Um, but I think diversity is such a whole other battle. Um,
But you need
it's super important,
for
but that's
innovation, you need
like
diversity.
another
Otherwise,
day job.
because you're saying from Albert Einstein, you can't solve the problem with the same way of thinking which caused the problems. Um, means already you need another view on that, and you only get it if you diversify your views, if you include more different people, different cultures, different genders, different
Exactly.
neurodiversity, just to tackle those problems. Otherwise, you always find a solution which is not new, if you like. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I would always love to work in diverse teams with diverse backgrounds and diverse ideas and trans disciplinary, uh, across borders, all of that.
Yeah.
So would definitely take my effort, put my effort in there and start problem solving with a group of people that looks like this. What I won't do anymore, or what I sometimes still have to do, but I prefer not to do, is really having the conversation with a whole group of
Old white
white
men.
middle-aged men, old white men
Yeah.
who hire a young a young company to help them to become more inclusive and sustainable. And I'm like, yes, okay, I can help you to a certain extent, but there is so much work that needs to be done
Yeah.
before we can really start making a change here. And that includes open hiring, different hiring, more inclusivity, more open mindset, and thinking that you can tackle the issue of climate justice in, for example, a Dutch company run by only old white men, to just put it bluntly, is simply ridiculous. That's not how it works.
But you see, we're just election in Germany means, and you see that the there's a decision made for the next centuries for the younger generation, but the Germany is an overaged population, and then the very old people were selecting the future of the younger generation. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
deciding on that, and that's not fair. Like the Brexit, where the old people voted for Brexit, and the younger generation they have to eat the soup. Yeah, and
yeah. That's why I love the term generational justice.
yeah,
It's quite gripping. Indeed, we have to think across multiple generations, and absolutely, indeed, because the other day there was a politician in the Netherlands who literally said that he didn't want to take action on climate on climate change and sustainability, because he was like, yeah, but we're not going to be there anymore then. And I'm like, in 2050 or 2060. I was like, yeah, that's easy for you to say as a 50, 60-year old.
exactly,
Well, like, what about the rest of us? What about your
exactly.
kids or your grandkids,
Yeah,
your family, other people's family? Like, just what about being a basic decent human being? Like, is it that
yeah,
hard?
yeah,
But yeah, apparently long-term thinking can be really, really hard, which is, it makes sense from like an evolutionary perspective, and from our sense of like thinking short term, being protective, making sure that we are okay right now, that we have our safety and our food and everything. But like, there is a reason why you have to put on your mask in an airplane first yourself, and then for someone else, because otherwise, if you don't take care of yourself, you
yeah.
can't take care of someone else. But I think there are companies and there are countries, mostly in the global north, like, where we didn't put one mask on, we put like 25 masks on. We're not taking two vaccinations, we're taking in some cases three. Like, we're overdeveloped, we're taking too much care of ourselves, and it's really time that we start like sharing more and looking beyond that. both
Yeah.
in a climate justice and a generational justice and diversity and all of these in all of these ways. But yeah, that again requires a massive mindset shift.
Yeah. And your company, you're the founder of the company, the Green Sprint, and you're helping really companies to for this transition to a more sustainable, more fair, purpose-driven business model. And
Mhm.
what would you just the time is passing by swiftly. Um, what what is your approach in doing that? I mean, it's just if you can probably just share some insights. What is the 3 or 2 or 4 step approach?
Yes, yes, of course. The first step is actually that we go through this mindset shifting. So we dive into the conversation and make sure that we get this sense of urgency across. Urgency for the business, urgency for the people, urgency for the planet. So you slowly go through this mindset shift. And this often means having Socratic conversations, having long and deep, hard conversations, tackling assumptions, asking questions, and basically, like, I love to call it being a professional pain in the ass, because that is what it is. Just really, really dig deep company therapy.
The
Like,
nagging conscience, huh?
yes, yes, yeah, yeah. You kind of have to just shake them
Yeah.
and shake them and get them to ready for this transition. Once this mindset shift is done as a company, and this company has like a collective approach to purpose, to why they exist, um, they have common values and all of that, then you can start get a bit more technical and start building a purpose strategy, a business strategy. Okay, what are going to be, what is our 20-year goal, our 10-year goal, a 5-year goal, and then you backcast, okay, what is needed to make it through those goals. Once you have your strategy in place, we go into the innovation process, and we still use the design sprint the design sprint methodology for the innovation part. And then overall, it is sort of tied in together by systems thinking. So constantly approaching it with a combination between zooming out, high level, zooming in onto the details, zooming out again. Okay, how are we part of the system? What is our position of the business? Um, what do we influence? Where do we have impact, both positively and negatively? And once you have that, a very good idea of like your position of a business in a system, not only directly on your direct consumers and your direct carbon CO2 emissions, but also indirectly, how do you influence people, what happens in your supply chain, what happens in the second tier of your supply chain, all of that. Once you have a good idea of that, you can also find the leverage points and start figuring it out. Okay, where does our sphere of influence end? Where can we create impact, and what is needed to realize that impact? So it's
Wow.
mindset shift, strategy, innovation.
Wow. And you pointed out perfect. I think it's illusion of stability. Means life is constant change, and you have to do this process on a regular basis. Huh?
Absolutely. The only constant is change. Yeah, it is, and
Exactly.
it is highly iterative, and you won't get it perfect the first round. Absolutely not. And it takes a long time. That's also why we often refer to the whole process as like a sustainability ladder, or maybe it will be even a ladder with loops in it, because you keep climbing a little bit higher and higher every time. And don't expect perfection or net zero or complete circularity or a complete mindset shift straight away. Absolutely not. Like unlearning, as human beings, unlearning is so hard. So this requires time to unlearn and then learn again. And you might have learned something not completely right the first time, or you have learned it, but then you don't know how to implement it, or you, as a company, fall back into your old habits. And then
Exactly.
yeah, you have to iterate and start over again.
You have to challenge your belief
It's a
systems,
it's a
your
super
old.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Wow. It's
yes, but that is
perfect.
what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah.
So that
And
is, I think it's fascinating to look at companies as they are, like they are people,
yeah.
and treat them as if they are people as well, people with purpose and values and all of that. And then people, they live in a world, they fulfill a certain role.
Yeah.
And like, how can you get those people on board
Yeah.
to care more and to work towards a sustainable and fair world?
I have two questions out of curiosity. In terms of companies you prefer to work, are these startups because you can shape them or bring them better in form? Or is the old companies which I have to restructure? Whether is the tougher nut to crack?
This is really interesting. Me and my business partner Pamela always have discussions around this. I love working with the older companies and change their mindset.
Yeah.
It's harder, yes. It can be frustrating, absolutely. But I think that is where the real impact can be made, and also what really needs, like there's the mindset really needs to change there, so you can really create impact. Where startups, not in all cases, but in many cases, are started by younger people, more millennials, maybe even younger, which already often have a more of an purpose-driven or impact mindset.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can shape them from easier from the beginning. But for me, that feels more like getting people who are already sort of on the right track to do better, even better, which can be super interesting and valuable. But it doesn't feel as challenging as changing that mindset shift from the big players on the market, from the companies and the small medium companies who have been doing their business for years and for years, and they will keep doing it for years because they're stable positioned businesses, but they need to go about things differently also for their right of existence and for them to be able to get to 2030 and 2050. And I think that is the really tough nut to crack. And
Yeah.
working with startups, yes, that's fun. Absolutely. Would love to do that as well, but more as a high energy, creative, surrounding, fun project to work on, and not as this is the real challenge I want to tackle.
Yeah, wow. Oh, no, I appreciate that. And in terms of just because time is really is nearly 1 hour, where can the people can contact you straight on LinkedIn, on where you what you have an own company webpage? Just give
Yes,
some insights there. Yeah.
you can always look at thegreensprint.com, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I am very active on LinkedIn, Minou Schillings. My name is in the screen as well. And very briefly, we're working on it right now. We're building a course focused on internal champions within companies, and we're going to learn you how to convince your boss to take
Yeah.
action on sustainability. So how can you have that conversation with your boss, and how can you build the case for like sustainable development and really sell it to them, so your management is convinced and will take action. So we'll start pushing this shortly, promoting this shortly as well. And I think this can be quite interesting for all the people, especially I see it a lot on LinkedIn, but I hear it a lot as well. All these people working in businesses, they care about the environment, they're worried, they do a lot about sustainability and sustainable living in their own life, but they don't really know yet how to actually integrate that into their business. So in many cases, these people shift. So they start looking for impact driven or purpose driven jobs. But that's not necessary. We don't want everyone to become a impact marketeer or a CSR reporter. At some point, we need everyone in their jobs where they are sitting right now, or where they will be sitting in the next couple of years, to start pushing for sustainability from the inside, internally, bottoms up, and then we can really start creating impact. And that is what this course is for. So, but
Well,
I'll tell more about that shortly.
okay.
So the
Thank
green
you.
sprint, you can find it there as well.
Thank you so much for really this was I loved I learned so much today again, and thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. That's the goal.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.